Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Titan Law. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with Douglas Munatsi, a banker and founding CEO of the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency, ZIDA. Enjoy this informative conversation. Douglas Munatsi, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor. I'm absolutely delighted that you finally found the time to sit down with me and have this conversation. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Trevor.
Doug, you are an investment banker, you are a farmer, you are a fitness fanatic, you are a golfer, founder of First Merchant Bank and Heritage Investment Bank, which you then build up into ABC Holdings, co-founder of BDF Capital Partners, and now founding CEO of ZIDA. When you look back at your life, is there anything that surprises you about how your life has turned out?
I guess I can say that because I think my kind of life has always been, sometimes people think I'm an extrovert, but by and large, I think I'm an introverted person. I debate and I discuss a lot of stuff within myself.
I don't believe you're an introverted person. Absolutely not. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So I do a lot of personal discussions. I walk, through processes, and then there's an element of people being surprised by who I've become. Many people I probably grew up in Fakose and everywhere else would never have thought that I would have done the kinds of things that I've done. But I always had an inner conviction that if I'm given an opportunity to do something, anything, I probably would do it to the best of my abilities and with conviction and without holding back. So in a way, the journey I have traveled, personally, I really give all the glory to God because a person like me should never have been able to do and achieve the kinds of things that I've achieved, I think. Yeah.
From humble beginnings. We'll get to those humble beginnings. Well, one thing that fascinates me looking at your journey is your selection of subjects. And I'm wondering, was this deliberate at UZ? You did BBS. And then you did an MBA finance with the American University in Washington. And then you completed a Harvard Business School advanced management program. Was this all deliberate? Was there serendipity in this? Talk to us about that.
I would say perhaps, again, I just think that when God has ordered your pathways, your footsteps, it happens the way it happens. And oftentimes you want to do certain things. And I think when I was in high school, at some point, I thought I would like to do medicine, as normal kids do. And then I had a teacher in high school who was a kind of propagated accounting. He drove big American cars. He just come back from South Africa, and he would talk highly about, I remember him saying, I don't forget, Durban where he was, and he gone to school there or worked there. So he kind of inspired me a little bit to say, maybe this is the way to go. And then, of course, most of my friends, when I was in high school, were doing accounting or one such. So it became, I was then drawn to those kinds of, subjects and ambitions and, birds of a feather, I would say. Yeah. So that's how I kind of gravitated towards that. And then later on in life, of course, my career started in banking. And I've been a banker through and through. It was so, you can say that most of the training that I then, looked for was to enhance my skills and my understanding of that area.
What I always find interesting looking at people's lives and their journeys, looking at your career, your education, it's as if God has been preparing you to be the founding CEO of ZIDA.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe we need to ask the president about that. But I think that, should we talk about ZIDA?
Let's talk about ZIDA.
Okay.
You are almost you're over a year now.
Just over a year.
You were appointed
Exactly,
1st of April
2020, yes.
Let's talk about ZIDA, and my question in talking about ZIDA is, what went through your mind when you got the call that you had gotten the job?
Well, so the issue really is that, as the president said at the launch of ZIDA, says, well, part of the reason why I appointed him to run ZIDA is because he always used to bug me and trouble me with. So I said, well, this is an opportunity for you now to put to practice some of the things that you always used to, yang in my ears. So I think that yours and my generation, we are a bit fortunate in some sense. The time that we went to university started, I remember at about 3 or 4 job offers. That doesn't happen very often today. Obviously, it still does for the maybe 1 or 5% top achievers. But in general, it is a different time. So when we did what we did, went through entrepreneurship and so forth, there is a sense that our generation has let down our country. We've gone through quite a period of really retrogression. We've gone backwards, and I think we can talk about that as well. So the idea that you want to always be, on the sidelines, criticizing and all those things, is also one that is not necessarily positive for the country. So when the call came, I reflected, obviously consulted my family, to have to deal with a civil service, father who has never worked in government all my life. It's time to serve. I think I can make a difference. That's what I really believe in. It's easy to be on the sidelines, but to be a participant is more difficult. So, I feel that I need to serve. I need to do my part. We can criticize later on, but show us what you can do.
You essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that you actually, we tease you and say that you had been unemployed because you were working for yourself. And I get the sense that you actually sacrificed quite significantly to take up this position. Is that a correct reading of the situation?
That is very correct. I would say that since leaving BancABC in December 2014, we've been building DBF Capital Partners and really having a really enjoyable corporate life. The three of us with our team, we've been lucky, and everything just seems to be going really well. And so, it was not an easy life to abandon to serve, but we all have to serve at some point.
That's interesting. So with the sacrifice, with everything that goes with that sacrifice, financially, position and so forth, the call to serve for you was much more important than anything else. Let's just dig deep into that.
Yes, Trevor. I think that you and I, we've been through this. We think that there are solutions that we can provide for certain challenges that are in our country, and therefore, when you are called upon to put in practice some of the things that you often lecture other people to do. That's the real test. What do they say? That's when the rubber meets the road, right? So yes, I think that is really what it is. It is to serve your country. It is to, and also I think you and I, having lived outside the country for a long time, you realize that it's not, it doesn't give you satisfaction to see other countries progressing, to see other people doing well, to see the kinds of things that you think we should be doing in our country, and you remain not contributing, not your hand to the plow or in the skin in the game. So it is really about that. It's about putting a bit of your own contribution, because very soon, we might not be able to do so physically and otherwise. But so it is really time to put to practice, to whisper quietly to the leaders, to say, we think we can do this slightly differently. We think we can improve if we do this. We think we can, improve our lot if we approach things slightly differently. And coming from the private sector, obviously you always think you know better, you know best.
Right.
So now let's put to test what you think is a solution for the country.
Unpack for us the big vision for ZIDA, the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency. That's it, hey? That's the name, eh?
That is correct.
Unpack to us the big vision, and as you do that, I want you to share with the viewers what success would look like for you when you eventually your term is up. What's the big vision, and what's Doug's success picture for ZIDA?
So I think the president has said this also openly, to say that quite a number of people had told him that one of the countries which has really pulled itself up and is a shining example of success is Rwanda. So when he went to Rwanda, he asked about President Kagame to say, what is it that you have done that it make you look so good in front of your own countrymen, Africa, and the world. And President Kagame shared with him about RDB, which is the equivalent of ZIDA in Rwanda. To the extent that President Kagame offered, my opposite number to come to Zimbabwe to share, what they've done differently, and that's where the journey starts. So it is really about how do you create a transformative agenda which would bring change to Zimbabwe. I think, first of all, in the first instance, you have to see that, okay, the president had the humility to ask a smaller country, Rwanda, to say, how did you do it? What can we do? So that is the charge, that is the challenge that the president placed on me to say, and he said this at our launch, he said, maybe the student can teach the teacher. So that is really how gigantic the task that has been placed on me is. And I think it starts with, it's a journey, clearly. In fact, talking to the World Bank and some of the people that actually helped with the process of building RDB in Rwanda, they say that if you are going to be very successful within the first 3 or 5 years, then you'd have done much better. Because in fact, Rwanda took over 10 years. Wow. It had other legacy institutions and different ways, and obviously improved its laws as well over time. So success is going to be if we help transform our country. But it starts with the basics. How do you treat an investor? So I look at my job as being in two, maybe three. In two, because we are responding to investors coming into this country, physically or now virtually. How do we respond to them? The usual thing is, are you quick enough? Are you responsive enough? You don't have bureaucracy or all those other things. So the processes themselves must be world class. And one of the things that the president said to me upon my appointment was that you need to benchmark ZIDA and Zimbabwe against the best in the world. Now, who is the best in the world? It's Singapore, right? And of course Rwanda and Mauritius on the continent, because those are Mauritius is ranked the highest in Africa. So the idea is that through our journey, success means that we must then stand side by side with those countries, with those institutions, and stand tall. So for example, Rwanda and Singapore would tell you that you can register your company within 2 hours. We are in days at the moment.
How many days?
Many. So I mean, it just depends. But right now, as we speak, we can register your company within a day or two. But that is also still not necessarily, we are not necessarily at a level where we can do that efficiently. The more interesting thing, actually, for your knowledge, is that you find even if ZIDA exists, people still go to the register of companies. They still go to ZERA. They still go to. I even had one of our common friends call me to say, "Oh, we've been trying to register. There's an investor who's been trying to register a company because people are, working from home. It's taking so much." I said, "But VB, come to me. You don't need to go to all those departments because I have within ZIDA all the people that will do all that work for you." So it's still going to take us quite a bit of time for people to realize that they actually don't need to go anywhere. They just need to come to ZIDA.
So ZIDA maybe needs to make noise and build your profile.
We do.
Yeah, you can't blame us for not knowing you.
We do. We still have a lot of heavy lifting to do in telling people what we do, in marketing ourselves, in shouting, some of the little steps, baby steps that we're taking, which are leading us toward the journey of success.
I was very impressed by the act. By the way, I think it's world class.
It is
absolutely world class. For you, what are the two key issues that your founding act provides to you?
Well, I think we must give credit to our lawmakers and also to the executive, because it was a collaboration. And again, although even we don't market ourselves as well as we should, it was really crafted with a lot of support from the World Bank and other development partners. So for me, as a private sector person, the most attractive part is that the act itself is actually administered by the president until he chooses to delegate somebody else. So that means that the usual thing that people will say, "Oh no, but is there political will?" That's one of the big things that I get asked by my friends. Yeah. Is there political will? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that you have got a world-class law is a big step in itself. So that is, I think, really, really good. There's something unique as well about the Act, which is that it tries to combine. First of all, it has got a very different governance structure to any of the government entities, right? So any government entity, that has got a board which is generally appointed by the minister, by the shareholder, and that a board is executive. The ZIDA Act actually does not have an executive board. It has got an advisory board. So in other words, it creates an environment in which the CEO and the board collaborate. And in general, you find that the board members are people who are experienced, people who are active in business. The issues that we try to deal with within ZIDA are daily issues for them. So they advise me as the CEO on some, even if we come up with ideas, but they still are the ingredient, the catalyst. They provide advice on, because they're obviously a board of very they're multi-skilled, multi-talented experiences and so forth, and so that is, I think, very important. But there is a plus one as well, which is that the act itself guarantees you protection of property rights, which I know that a lot of investors mourn about, and just it is very clear about we will not violate your property rights. We will not take over your assets. We will not, all those things are very clearly laid out. So I would say that, it is really a very strong statement of intent by the government, by the country, to say, investors, come, we will look after your investments. So I said to you, there are two parts to this job. Maybe not necessarily during my time, but certainly in the future. So we respond to investors, but we need to go where the Singapores of this world are now, where you look at yourselves, you look at your country, and you say, okay, we think we've got a competitive advantage here. We think we can do this better. For example, we've got a very highly educated population. What can we do with them? So we are not, we are the ones that must then be creative in identifying opportunities in the country. So that is now, I would say, ZIDA plus, because now you are really, scouting all over the world for investors that would come to Zimbabwe because this is what we can do. You are not just responding because, investors from all over the world, they've walk through the door and said, I want to mine, or I want to do X, Y, Z. So I think, to me, that is really where ZIDA needs to eventually end up.
It also repeals the Zimbabwe Investment Authority Act, Chapter 30, the special economic zones, the joint ventures. It puts them all together melds them into ZIDA. Is it? Do you want to talk about that?
That is correct. So the legacy institutions was, as you correctly say, Zimbabwe Investment Authority, the joint venture unit, which sat in the Ministry of Finance, the one-stop shop as well, which sat in OPC, and ZIMSEZA, which was the Special Economic Zone Authority. It all bundles them into one institution, which is ZIDA. And basically, we deal with general investments. You want to do mining, you want to do anything else. We also then deal with special economic zones, which is all those ones that had been designated before the formation of ZIDA. And of course, the joint venture, all public-private partnerships with the state are done through ZIDA. We are the entity that works with all government entities, our government ministries, when they want to do any joint venture and so on and so forth. We are the ones who do the first interrogation and so forth, and then we recommend that to a committee, which is chaired by the Permanent Secretary for Finance, Mr. Gomatanga, and then we recommend to cabinet. So it is a very streamlined process, which I think has got a lot of potential to transform our country.
The one-stop investment service center, I think you do yourself a disservice by not standing on tables and shouting about that, because the way it's explained in the Act, you have a desk for RBZ, you have a desk for immigration, Environmental Management Authority, ZIMRA. Or essentially, you are a little government within a government. Tell me about how practical that is. Is that working? Why am I asking? Is because civil servants have a tendency to protect TEF and all that kind of stuff. Is this actually working, or this is work in progress?
It is working, but as I said before, you still go to the register of companies when you want to start your business. when in fact you should just come to us. But actually, it is even bigger than what the Act says, because remember the Act gives minimum what we call secondees. They are seconded to ZIDA.
Yeah.
They are still employed by the government, by the departments and entities that they represent, but they all sit in one shop. But we also have requested for more. For example, before the Act was promulgated, medicinal cannabis was not one of the sectors that we promoted or we dealt with or we had legalized. So post the promulgation of government policy on medicinal cannabis, we have requested for somebody from the Medicines Control Council to sit within ZIDA, so that when you want to start your medicinal cannabis project, you just come to ZIDA. We coordinate all those approvals that you need from government entities, so the Medicines Control Council, Ministry of Health, or anybody else. So all of that comes to us. And even on implementation. So we have a person from a Reserve Bank, if there's any Reserve Bank requirements that are there, and we deliver within minimum delays, because we have interaction at the most senior level. In fact, if you go back to the Act says that if, let's say, we request for a secondment from a government ministry, or government ministries do not respond within certain times, we are required to actually name those people through the government to the office of the president to say, so and so is not cooperating with as intended. So it is quite again, I keep saying that it's a giant step to say if anything at all will be an obstacle for investment to come into the country, it won't be because we are not actually processing those investments efficiently.
What concerns are you coming across from investors that you are interacting with? What concerns do they have?
Well, it's actually very interesting. I know that we haven't met all the investors that are supposed to be coming to the country. In general, so resource-seeking investment, which is mining, tourism, and so forth, they come to the country because they know, for example, that this is the only country with besides South Africa which has got platinum reserves the way we do. So the interest of investors are all very varied, but in general, that lack of working of the one-stop shop is still one of the frustrations, because some investors come to me and they say, well, I've been trying to do this for 6 months or a year.
Wow.
And they just didn't even connect the dots, that, they're supposed to come to us. And no, it's okay. We'll deal with your issues. Are you sure? Yes. We'll deal with all your issues. We'll get all your licenses. We get all your permits and everything else that you need. And as you said, I think it's still we still need to do a lot of marketing about, what we are there for, because, people are still finding some frustrations within government. But I think also it's a process as well within, because as you know, 1st of April I was appointed, lockdown comes. Yeah. So it's almost 2020 was a very difficult year in that respect. So it is only now that we are really starting. I've got a full complement of staff.
How big is your staff?
If we include the secondaries, about 40, 50.
You talk quite glowing, and then one understands about the guarantees in the Act around expropriation and nationalization. That investor is not going to be compelled to cede investment to another. But there is a different reality, a parallel universe, where there's a sense that the culture of being a constitutional democracy, the culture of the rule of law, sometimes gets messed around, and it sends a wrong impression out there. The British ambassador, Melanie Robinson, was a guest on this show, and she had a number of issues that she raised about what British investors say about investing in Zimbabwe. Let's listen to the tape. What are you hearing from UK investors about what they consider to be obstacles to investing in Zimbabwe?
Well, it's a good question because it is one of my jobs to try to encourage UK investors to come to Zimbabwe. And as I say, in terms of the stock of investment, the UK has actually been the biggest investor in Zimbabwe over time. I should say very clearly, the one thing that they absolutely never mention is targeted sanctions. It has no bearing at all on their decisions, at all. There are three things actually I would say, three plus one, that they always mention. The first is the problems with the money, to be able to repatriate their profits, to know that they can access dollars, to know that they can exchange dollars into Zim dollars. The fact that there are two exchange rates and there is such a gap between them that you don't know when you can get dollars, you may have to wait 6 weeks. All of this makes it an incredibly difficult environment for businesses to work in. Secondly, they do worry about property rights. And we have businesses, British businesses here in Zimbabwe that unfortunately still to this day struggle to uphold their property rights. It might be a mine, for example, where they've got miners on their property and they're not able to properly deal with that. Or it might be the uncertainty that to this day, unfortunately, there still are compulsory moves on land. So that second piece is a fundamental certainty that investors need. And that's not to own the property, but to be able to lease the property and have some certainty in the legal standing of that lease. And finally, the rule of law, because even if you can get a ruling that a certain money should be paid back or a certain lease should be respected, that is often not upheld. And so people, again, can't have the certainty to do business. And so we have had businesses come and look at agricultural investments. We've tried to attract more mining investments. We are looking at renewable energy, but getting people to choose Zimbabwe in a global market where they could choose to go to any of Zimbabwe's neighbors. Capital is fickle. It will go wherever the investment opportunities are the best. And until Zimbabwe can sort out those really essential business environment issues, that money will go elsewhere. And I said it's 3 plus 1. The plus one is corruption. It's corruption. You might think that you're coming here and you're going to bid on a contract, or you're going to come and supply energy, and you think you're going through a reasonable process, and suddenly something else happens and a bidder that wasn't even in the process gets the contract, or you thought you had a financial arrangement that then gets undercut. And that level of corruption and illicit finance makes it a very unstable and very difficult, very expensive environment for people to work in. British companies are not allowed by British law to engage in any bribery or corruption. So it's not a level playing field for them. And again, they will go somewhere where they can do honest, good business.
So what's your response to the ambassador's comments?
Well, I think I do have very robust debates with her, by the way, because as part of my job,
Melanie Robinson.
Yes, we interact, and she's very open, and she also accepts my views. I think that it's a difficult process, and I think a difficult situation that sometimes Zimbabwe walks, because the rule of law in general, had suffered because of starting from land reforms and whatever happened. But I'm not aware of any specific examples of where people's property rights have been violated. And as you know, I mean, I'm a good example of the respect of the rule of law. I had illegal settlers on my farm. I tried. I went to court. We had a high court ruling. You go to the police. Guys, can you protect the sheriff when the sheriff evicts illegal settlers? And they just looked at you. But fast forward, you go to the police, and the police, you even hear senior police officers saying, "No, I'm being sued in my personal capacity, so I'm going to make sure that we do this." So I can say that in general, I don't think it is something that any investor would be asked an investor would suffer from. Certainly not in my experience under the new dispensation. I mean, I can't speak for other cases, but as you also know, most of the cases that receive publicity, some of them are actually factually not correct. And we can go into some of them, but I think that there is a genuine desire to make sure that people adhere to the law, particularly, and I can only speak for investors and so forth, and respect of property rights and all those things. I think I don't know of good examples, but I am of the view that we are getting better.
Your story, I'm glad you brought it up, of your farm being invaded. There's many other stories, Doug. You will say they are not accurate and so forth, but then when they make the headlines, if your story had made the headlines in New York and in London and everything else, it would have been a terrible story. You suffered for how many years?
Almost 20.
20 years, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a local investor. What example are we setting to a local investor who's bought their property and want to work, and they can't work because you've a squatter? So you might say some of these are inaccurate, but the moment there is a perception that some people can get away with stuff, point number one. The moment there's a perception that there are law and rule breakers who get away with it, that perception for you in charge of ZIDA can be easy on you doing your work.
It is not, but you would have to give me good examples of anything like that happening in the last 18 to 24 months.
Let's take the Chilonga, the removal of the rural communities to allow the growing of this grass, the way it was handled, the headlines that it has made. Was that all necessary? Does it help Doug's work?
But I don't think you've got all the facts though, Trevor, because you know that our investment in Tokwe-Mukosi, that water is lying idle. So you put in a lot of money. The whole idea, because I met the investors and I asked them about it almost like a year ago. And what they were saying is that this water is lying idle. No one is using it at the moment. Because remember, when Tokwe-Mukosi was built, it was supposed to provide water to the sugarcane estates in the south. But no one is using it. So the idea was, how do we convert this into a viable enterprise, export generating, and make the community part of the scheme? That's the raison d'etre. So I know that some of our friends, common friends, have made a meal out of it. But let's be realistic. Let's also go down and look at what it is that we are trying to do. Ultimately, we are trying to create an environment in which our people are going to be better than what they are today. So I'm not going to go into the politics of that particular scheme, but there are a lot of half-truths in that scheme.
My point is, you might be right, I don't have all the facts, but my point is sometimes the way these things are done and the perception that is given out there. Because I think for you, as head of ZIDA, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with reality and the perception. And sometimes the perception tends to be the reality.
That is true. That is true. And I think in general, we receive a lot more flack than the reality on the ground, unfortunately. And that is part of what we all need to fix. How do we market ourselves? I've yet to come across an investor, a new investor into this country. I can give you one good example. There's an investor who is looking to set up a gold mine in Mashingo somewhere. He's already been to us with 3 other projects because he says he just cannot believe the opportunities. He was telling me the other day, I've been allocated a site in Victoria Falls along the Zambezi. I'm going to build a 5-star lodge. In the meantime, back at the ranch, you and I are complaining about a whole lot of things. So I think that part of the difficulty I have, yes, is the perception. Perception is very negative. But there are bright spots. Bright spots are that every single investor I've come across speaks very highly of our people, speak very highly of the reality of the opportunities on the ground. And the conviction that things are getting better and things will be better. So I think we have to keep hustling. We have to keep telling the positive story, and hopefully the positivity will overwhelm the negativity at some point. At that point of inflection, I don't know where it's going to be, but while that is happening, we have to do like Johnny Walker, right? Keep on walking.
Yes. Keep on walking. Let's go to, you were born in Highfields, eh?
I was born in Highfield.
Highfields, humble beginnings.
Old
like
Highfield.
Like you're saying,
Fear
without
boy.
God, you wouldn't be here. You're a fear boy. Talk to us about that earlier formative period of yours.
Yes, so my parents lived in Old Highfield, and I was actually born at Highfield Clinic. My mom says she just didn't have the time to rush to Gomo, which was the famous hospital at the time that my siblings were born at. And then we moved to Mfagose when Mfagose was a newish suburb. But my dad moved around quite a bit. I'm told at some point we lived in Mutare briefly. But Gweru, I was now a little person, so I remember Gweru very fondly. It shaped who I am. I think coming from very humble, extremely humble, but very loving family, I have to say. Very, very strong mom. I always, wonder what would have happened if she's the one who had passed, because my dad passed when I was a teenager. It's a very enriching background.
What do you, as far as mom is concerned, where has she raised you by the hand, and where you feel she's really been influential in your life?
Christianity. Yes. So she would not, we were made to pray every night. So whether she would make you feel very guilty about all your mischief and love. So we are not a very big family, but growing up, she insisted that, our cousins on her side, the ladies, we call them mother, the uncles, so we have a very interesting situation where we absolutely love our mom's side of the family, because that's how she brought us up. We absolutely love our dad's side of the family as well. Because with my dad having passed when we were very young, we didn't interact too much with that side, because you didn't even have bus fare. So, but we were reunited, so we are very, very close. I mean, in fact, yesterday I had a game of golf with my cousins, the wider family, and very, very, we are small but very loving family.
And then, Doug, you then got into Barclays Bank, then Zimbank, IFC. But I want us to focus on your founding First Merchant Bank and Heritage Investment Bank. Where did the motivation and the inspiration coming from? This man who takes time to go through a tube of Colgate, deciding to start a bank. Where does the motivation come from?
So, again, going back to God and God's orders, I was, as you said, I started my training with Barclays. There's a gentleman who was there, who was in charge of our program, which was a graduate training program. He was reputed to be very racist. So I had a fight with my branch manager. And in the fight, and I deliberately wrote him a long letter, nasty, because he had given me a very bad appraisal, because we were appraised almost every month or every time we went for a course. So because I was I was on a 3-week training course at that time, which was an advanced course, learning how to lend. So I knew I was not going to see him for 3 weeks. So I blasted him in this letter. So obviously, Mr. Williams calls me. He says to me, "Why the hell did you do that?" I had obviously my reasons in my defense. And to my surprise, he said something that really stayed with me. Even if people thought he was racist, he was this, he was that, he says to me, "That was very dumb what you did." But anyway, these guys think we are training you to be a teller. No, we are training you to take over from Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett was the MD. I was just, I was flattened, because I said to myself, wow, this guy, they say he's racist, but he's thinking that me, a young black boy, will end up being the MD of Barclays.
But you've just sent him this nasty letter.
No. He was in charge of the program.
Oh, right,
He's not the branch manager. The branch manager, we became friends.
Wow.
And then when I was looking for a job, I found him. He was on an interview panel. Anyway.
So this is an affirmation that you were not expecting.
Yes.
A recognition.
Not from him, because you know how it is. People will just be gossiping.
And then what did that do to you? What did that do to you?
Oh man, it just boosted my motivation. I was like, wow. I knew I wanted to do well, all those things. But at that time, when I'm just a graduate trainee, and the guy says to me, "We are training you to take over for Mr. Bennett," who was a British expatriate, I was like, wow. It's also like one statement that one guy once said to me. So my dad has passed on. I'm now either Form 2 or Form 3. We just written our Form 2 exams. So, I go to visit my grandparents and all that. And then this guy says, "Oh, so what are you doing now?" So I tell him, we're in a group of, youngsters. And then he says, "That's probably the end of your education career. Where are you going to get the money from?"
Wow. The opposite.
And I was like, I was telling my mom this story, hey? And I was like, watch me now. I'm going to surprise you. Wow. But I never responded to him. I never told anyone for the longest time, until I told my mom about a year or so ago. So some of these things that kind of motivated you and really, became the fire in you to prove to yourself. Because, if you don't share something, you're obviously trying to prove it to yourself. So I would say that those formative and incidences in life sometimes change the course of your life. So I was lucky enough to...
What I find interesting, sorry to break your stride, is you have a positive affirmation that stirs you up and inspires you. You have one person who comes in and almost breaks you, but you use that to your advantage. That's fascinating.
Yes. So that's why I said to you, sometimes I'm an introvert. I talk to myself a lot. So are you going to fail? Are you, what are you going to do about it? So the kind of thing certainly has motivated me. So I go through my banking training. I go to the US to do my MBA, and all things that are happening are just, really inspiring me. And I think also towards the time that I was now in varsity and starting to work, I as you know, I was very close to Oliver Chidao, my brother. We debate a lot, we talk a lot, we inspire each other a lot. He's one of the most amazing people you could meet. He is a sponge, he listens. So I would share ideas with him. And sometimes you just follow my ideas. Some of them would fail, and so on and so forth. Some of them would succeed. And one of them is obviously I've now working for IFC. One of my friends in IFC was a senior. My senior was Kenyan. He says to me, "Come help me. Let's set up the IFC Joburg office. I need your help." So I went there. I would be there for weeks sometimes. It gave me a lot of time to think. At that time, NMB had just started. and we see a lot of the good things that these guys were doing. Nick Vingerai had already, been trading. A lot of things were happening. So it was time that I kind of said to myself, I think also the IFC job also gave me this platform of building relationships. And those relationships came in handy. I mean, I would give you one example. When I was with IFC, I used to sit on the board of BDC in Botswana, Botswana Development Corporation. And one of the board members who used to sit there became governor of the central bank and minister of finance. So that relationship just flourished over the years. So that allowed me to be able to see and say to myself, but I can do this. But again, through that discussion and debate in myself, which I would obviously always bounce off Oliver and say, Nkoma, what do you think about this thing? Are you sure? So that's how I would say that the process of seeing the success of other black Zimbabweans and having this internal conviction to say, I think I can do this. I really think I can. And so that's how we started Heritage Investment Bank. But deliberately also trying to say, I think there's something very unique that we can do. So I was very selective in hiring. I had not read Jack Welch's book at the time. I had not read Malcolm Gladwell's book at the time. I had not read Good to Great by Jim Collins. But I then realized later that the hiring of the best skills is always the best solution in any venture.
You had not read this book, so where did you get the idea from?
I just had this feeling that if I'm going to do well, I have to partner smart, people who are, smarter than me. I think the IFC also taught me something about working with some of the smartest people in the world. I mean, I know Ivy League education, but 80% of IFC staff, World Bank and all these guys are all Ivy League guys. So I was kind of like an exception. But that gave me this opportunity to really realize what good could be, what as the book says, good good is the enemy of great, what great could be. So you find, I mean, I always share this example with my staff at the bank when I was still running the bank, that my early boss was Scottish, very dry humor, but very smart guy. So he says to me, can you look at this project, prepare a memo for it. This is how we do it. So I prepare, I hand it over to him. He looks at it and says, let's go into the boardroom. We get into the boardroom and he starts going through my, correcting it. So I said to him, don't worry about the English. It's not my first language. So because he was Scottish, he hit me hard and says to me, mine neither. Wow. You see? So I then was almost like what Paul says, under the feet of Gamaliel. I learned what great was, what near perfection was.
Talk to me about the pain points of building First Merchant Bank and Heritage, and eventually bulking up to build ABC Holdings.
We've done a lot of great things with Heritage Investment Bank. We were the first to do commercial paper in this market. And I remember now that BZ and I have worked together for such a long time, he was telling me the gossip that was going on.
BZ is Big Timber Moyo.
Yes, yeah. in Stanbic. That, initially guys would obviously say, no, they would complain. They would go, obviously, because the big banks had most of the clients. I remember very well doing commercial paper and the Anglo guys, we had done a structure for them and they said, well, can you do it? And we said, yes. So we did that structure. And, Anglo was the market. So all of a sudden, we are the darlings of the market in terms of particular products and certain things.
What were those things, if you could remember?
We were doing commercial paper. We're doing, we did the first currency swap. We did convertible bond. So, for insurance companies, we call them pangolin bonds. We say to them, you can issue paper in dollars, but convertible, but with a tracking Zim dollar value.
Right.
We sponsored ZESA at that time when Eskom used to be a blue chip company. We sponsored, ZESA guys to say to them, come and see what we are proposing for you to do. And they gave us a mandate, and we did the first megawatt bonds and megawatt bills. We're doing really, really, exciting things, and we were really. I remember our board. Moich, Ngoni, all those top guys. Would really encourage us as guys. We like what you're doing. We like what you're doing. So what happened is that Anglo is exiting its non-core businesses when it wants to go and list in the UK. My old friend Kala Mbinga, I go to him and I said, Kala, Anglo owns a bank in Zim. Are you able to help me talk to the right people? Philip Boma, our friend, had just been appointed to come to lead Zim. So he said to me, don't worry. But Anglo will never do a deal with somebody they don't know. So Kala goes to talk to Philip Baum. Next thing is, I have an appointment to go and meet Philip. Go to 44 Main. That is the old Anglo building. So I go to talk to Philip. Yeah, it was a process, but long story short, Philip and I signed a deal before my board knew, before his board knew. Before the Anglo board.
To buy First Merchant Bank.
Yes. That's just how the relationship. So, people don't understand sometimes when I value my relationship with Kala, because he's the guy who unlocked the relationship for me. Because, and we discovered, Philip and I then discovered that the management of FNB were talking to somebody else about a deal. And Philip just said to me, don't worry, we're going to do this deal.
But you are very good at relationships, Doug. You're very good at relationships.
I try.
That must explain quite a lot of your success.
Well, I tell that to my family sometimes, to say to them, listen, no one is obliged to help you in life. You have to also remember that you need to build relationships, and you need to invest in other people as well.
So you buy First Merchant Bank, and then what's the inspiration for bulking up into ABC Holdings?
Relationships again.
Talk to me about that as briefly as possible.
But
what's driving it? There's relationships on the other side. What's this? What's this talk that you're having with yourself?
So remember that around about 96, 97, Trust were converting from a merchant bank to a retail. NMB, everybody was converting into, Kingdom was converting to retail banks. So we said, and this is one of the things that I can say to young entrepreneurs, that we used to do a lot of debates within our group. We had very smart people, but I allowed debate, and the best ideas should sell. So we sat as an executive team and said to ourselves, okay, what do we do? Everybody is converting to a retail bank. Where should our growth come from? So we thought, let's go regional. We even applied and got a banking license in Swaziland, merchant banking license. The market was very rich. It was very ready for us because, having worked for IFC as well, I knew a lot of people in that market because IFC had invested in a number of, companies there. But we couldn't make it work because our partner on the other side just became difficult. So we decided, let's walk away. So what then happened is that at that time, Anglo as well had invested in an SPV, almost like what you can call now private equity.
Was that UDC?
The UDC vehicle,
ULC,
a UDC vehicle in Europe,
okay,
which involved Anglo, the BNP Paribas, a number of other. They were calling it almost like an investment of conscience. They wanted to be seen to be not to be doing things which were different from what was happening in South Africa under apartheid. So Anglo was exiting that. So Philip calls me and says to me, we own this thing.
Wow.
Look at it. Maybe it might work. And then, in his usual very, blue sky kind of thinking. He says to me, Doug, you could actually build a regional bank out of this platform. Long story short, that's how we then, UDC was in Botswana, it was in Zim, of course, where it started. It was in Botswana, it was in Mozambique, in Tanzania, and Zambia. So we looked at this thing, 1999, the Zim dollar is going crazy. And anyway, long story short, 19th of June, if I recall correctly, 2000, we listed on the Botswana Stock Exchange. Botswana just promulgated, international financial services that, as a vehicle for people who wanted to do business in the region. So we were the first to be licensed. Very exciting times. So that is how these, bulking up, became, a reality.
And so clearly that Philip Bohm relationship was important. The Kala Mpinga relationship is important. That's part of your story. These relationships, that they've delivered amazing stuff.
That's very true.
Do you pay it forward?
Well, it's just really accepting that somebody else is better than me. And therefore, let me try and absorb as much as I can. Kala. I don't know how much you know about Kala, but Kala knew anybody and everybody on the African continent at his prime. At his prime, yes. So that was really how this whole thing eventually evolved and became what it is today.
And then you surprise people by exiting ABC Holdings. Talk to us about why you did it. The pain, the joy of doing it, the tears, if any. We get emotionally connected to our investments. And for you to walk away to something that you've just over the past 30 minutes outlined to us how you built it, that must not have been easy. Talk to us about, first of all, why you did it and go into the pain and then later on the joy.
So in 2014, or was it 2013, I had been invited by the then controlling shareholder of ABC Holdings, which was a German company, which was called ADC. And they invited me to a dinner in Frankfurt. It's just an African boy from Fagose now, invited, and with the founder of Trafigura, who at that time was hosting the dinner. And at that dinner, there were two people. One was Bob Diamond and Arnold Ekpe, the former CEO of EcoBank. And they were talking about growth. How should, this institution that, Trafigura had supported, how can this institution grow? I gave them my 2 cents. Fast forward, I think towards the end of 2013, I get a call from Bob Diamond. Says to me, can we meet in London? So I went to London, and he says, I've just raised 300 plus million, and I've got amazing fundraising capabilities. You have built this business. It's a very decent platform. We can grow this business into other 15 or so countries, and you are the foot soldier. I'm the fundraiser. Made a lot of sense. We had grown, but we always struggled with lack of capital, because if you don't have a big parent in banking, it's always going to be a challenge. So it made a lot of sense. Came back, sold it to my colleagues. There was a lot of debate, but I was like, guys, trust me. Anyway, fast forward, 2014, the deal was concluded. And then I think it closed around about August. Bob says to me, you and I are going to be, we're going to do this. And I was very excited, right? Because if we had ever lacked anything, it was capital. But then the second thing is, he says, I want you to meet somebody. Okay, this is another visit to London. Who do I meet? Ashish Thacker. He's my partner, we met, our views converge. I was like, okay. So we conclude everything else, and then just before the transaction was it announced, or after the transaction had been announced, he says that I also want you to meet somebody, John Vitalo.
Wow.
He's going to be the CEO. So I wasn't expecting that, but then I rationalized and I said, okay, Bob is sitting in New York. Can he trust an African, sitting in Johannesburg and running this franchise? So maybe John Vitalo is justified, Back at the ranch, I'm convincing my team that, I got this. So eventually, the deal is closed. Look, I can tell you that the early days were beautiful. Bob, we had an exco meeting for Douglas Mara in Nantucket. The kind of exposure. This is what is it called? It's a kind of like a movement or some kind of. They meet every year. They invite people who are original thinkers, scientists, politicians, and so forth. Yeah, John Kerry was there. That meeting. He came to address us. And Bob says to me, "Do you want to play golf?" I said, "Of course." And who were we playing with? Larry Summers. Come on. This is
you've arrived,
the life.
Doug. You've arrived.
Yeah. And that evening, they took off in a private jet, went to Beyonce's show. So Ashish just whispers to me, he says, I gotta go. They tell us the next day that they'd gone to Beyonce's show. Fly to New York and, had dinner at Bob's place. Everything. Getting you to Washington. I'm chauffeur driven. We used to walk to meetings, come on. Now I've got my own car and driver, things, yeah. It was nice. He exposed me to a lot of things and I was like, we continue to do this, we're gonna do something really special. Towards the end of the year, right? The things that I'm discussing with John
Vitalo.
Yes. Exco has decided in Nantucket that there's certain things we should do. We're supposed to invest, to disperse money in, capitalize Botswana, put some money into Tanzania and so on and so forth. I remember very distinctly, in fact, my partners were there. At a slight distance, we just met the governor of the Bank of Botswana at the time, Mamotlo. I said, John, the funding, I told management that, we're going to be dispersing. He says, it's just some administrative, a bad word that I can't say on this show.
Yeah.
Okay. Then a couple of weeks later, I remember very distinct because it was my wife's birthday, remember? And I get a call from him. He's in Lagos. And then he says to me, with whatever he says, and I said, John, and I did say this. I said, but John, I'm not a field. You can't do things this way. Obviously was offended, but we'd go through consultation, we agree things, we do them properly and so on and so forth. You can't just tell me that this is what has been decided, Obviously, Bob got to know that I'd said to John, I'm not a field nigger. I did say that, actually. So Bob calls me, says, but in the US, this is not good language. And I said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, but this is what I meant. So anyway, pretty much relationships started breaking down. The guys wouldn't listen to basic things. They are limo guys. We go to meetings on foot. We walk. So so long story short, that's how the cookie crumbled. Yes, but one of the most important things, and I say this to new young entrepreneurs, once you list a company, it's no longer yours. So you must accept the fact that a listed company belongs to shareholders, public and private, and therefore certain things can happen. And along the way, I can tell you so many instances when I woke up one day and I thought I almost lost my job. because directors can decide. Yeah. And so when we saw that things were not going well, fortunately at that time the guys were really, in cloud nine. John came, met our chairman. Initially they wanted to isolate us, but we decided no, it's either all of us or nothing. So, do you want to lose these guys? Yes. Wow. Yes, we can replace them tomorrow. We are like, and I told my colleagues, guys, let's take our money and run, because I don't like where this train is going. It's going at full speed. It has no controls. So it is emotional.
It's emotional, and this is limousine stuff.
Yeah.
Is there something that you should have picked up which you didn't? When you look back, you were trying to convince your colleagues. You convince your colleagues to go with this thing. When you look back, when you introspect, when you reflect, are there signs, telltale signs that it should have told you that this deal would go the way it did?
My biggest regret about the transaction is that, one of the things that I really believed in was that staff had to be part owners of the company, and they were. We had worked hard for most of our staff to be shareholders, especially those who were there in the early stages. And when the transaction happened, most of them stayed in the company with all of us. And my biggest regret is that most of them lost all their investment, because we didn't see it coming, to be honest. There were signs, but I would lie if I said that anything that Bob ever said or did in the initial stages, in the deal consummation and so on and so, the early stages, that there was anything abnormal. But I just saw signs. And you started seeing that there's an ExCo within an ExCo. There are things that I'm not being told, but I should be told.
Because you're a chief executive officer.
I'm chief executive officer of the biggest subsidiary at that time.
So what lessons did you learn from that transaction? The way it falls apart at the surplus amount. What lessons did you learn from there?
Well, first of all, I should actually have encouraged my staff to crystallize, to monetize and take their cash. We should have exited at the time of the transaction, because you now have monetized, you now have crystallized. I think I was saying to you that you should never be emotional with investments. Yes, you are building an institution, you're doing it for posterity, you're doing it for growth, you're doing it for a whole lot of people, but you should never be emotional. And therefore, we should have agreed with Bob, taken our cash and gone, sailed into the sunset. But even then, we are extremely happy that we exited at the time we did.
So you took your money and you ran, and you then formed BDF Capital Partners, DBF Capital Partners, which is Doug, Begtemba, and Francis, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's now a partnership running rather 70 million worth of assets.
Wow.
You've done well.
And growing, yes.
So when you look back, you're being, for lack of a better word, kicked out of ABC was a blessing in disguise.
It was indeed. In fact, we always discuss this amongst ourselves to say, we wish we had left sooner. Because, and we have also decided we're not going to have a traditional private equity structure where you have limited partners and general partners. We just going with the little money we have. We don't worry about AGMs and worry about shareholders. We are the shareholders, and we worry about ourselves. So I think at our age, it's probably a good model. You do things. Even after leaving BancABC, we're learning. I mean,
there were tears, though, if I recall, from your friends, your colleagues, the team. Yes, we should have done this sooner, but at the time, the emotional bonds losing this thing that you've put in so much. Talk to me about that.
At our last function, we are leaving in December of 2014. People cried. I mean, it was hugely emotional, extremely. I mean, we had built this company. We were a family. In fact, that's one of the criticisms that we got from the new shareholders, to say, you know, this is not a bank, it's not a business. You're just friends. But it was amazing, because that's what made us to be so successful. Trevor, I can tell you now that I can count how many of my former staff are doing exceptionally well wherever they are. I don't want to name names, but they are running institutions. They are in Mozambique. Two of them were handpicked by the government to run, very important government entities. Extremely successful. So I'm very, very humbled by that. And also, it tells you something. I used to interview all the graduate trainees. I did the final interview. I did the selection. Well, obviously with my colleagues, but it was my conviction that if we get the right people, we will be successful. And just to say something which is actually very important. In Botswana, when we first went into Botswana, how people are, Botswanans are lazy, they are this, they are that. We got there and we decided to plant our own trees. I hear all the time from people saying, wow, the quality of skill, the service, and all those things. So, I mean, quality of people makes you a winner.
And what does DBF invest in? Do you have any particular areas that
we
you
are very
focus on?
agnostic.
Okay.
We don't choose any area. Obviously, financial services is our natural default. But we're invested in oil and gas. We're invested in microfinance. We've got very successful microfinance business, which is really growing. We are struggling to fund it to cope with the growth. So we are pretty agnostic. We look, hopefully, with a little bit of experience and knowledge, we pick on investments that we think have got very high chances of success. In fact, one of our early investments, we exited, and we made a good bundle of money. But again, we're not emotional, because Blue Label bought the business and we walked, and everything was fine. What has really helped us without a doubt is that our relationship as well. I've been a client of Investec for years and years. I knew Steve Kosev from back then. So Investec has, by and large, underwritten most of our transactions. We have partnered with them. They're not easy, but they've been very, very very supportive. If I needed to go and see Steve Kosev, I would go and see him, see if we need help. Yeah.
Doug, what an amazing, inspirational journey. Our viewers who are all across the world love books on this show. And do you have any books that you've read that have made a huge impact that you'd want to recommend to our viewers?
The books that I really enjoyed, I know you have enjoyed as well, because now my focus is really mostly on what has made Bill Gates to be who he is, and that kind of stuff. Not so much the theory of or whatever, because that world is different for me. So I really, really enjoyed Martin Meredith. I know Martin Meredith was not very popular in this country. But his The State of Africa just really, 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 it's a thick book, but I totally enjoyed it. Shoe Dog. I think Shoe Dog for me is it's almost as if Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, many people find it interesting because I think he puts out all his weaknesses. He was even his first girlfriend. How he went to Japan and spent time there.
It's a beautiful book.
It's an amazing book. It's an amazing book. But I think it's the fragility of him, but yet look at what Nike is today. I mean, everybody abandoned Tiger when he went through his challenges.
But Nike didn't.
Yeah, Phil said no. Yeah. We're gonna stick around with you. And so for me, that is one of the great books. Obviously, Outliers. I think Outliers is sort of kind of somewhere between a biography or autobiography and some kind of theory. I guess maybe because of Michael Gladwell's background. I think also it speaks to greatness, isn't it? I mean, perfection. Yeah. You can eventually get it. But you have to try so many times.
You have to work at it. Doug, your story is very inspirational, and we just touched the surface of it. There's so much that we would have wanted to talk to you about, but nonetheless, thank you so much for creating the time to spend with us discussing your inspirational story. Thank you so much, and we wish you all the best as the founding CEO of ZIDA, and we look forward to your transformative impact within ZIDA and what it is going to do for the country. So we wish you all the best. Allow me, Doug, to turn over to our viewers who are in Zimbabwe, who are on the continent, and all across the diaspora for continuing to watch this show and making it the success that it has become. We invite you to ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations, to please subscribe by clicking onto this red button, and you receive an alert every time we have this quality conversation. We're out every Monday at 7 a.m. So please, until next time, cheers to you all.